My mother was a brilliant, 5-foot-tall, brown woman with an accent. She taught us to never complain about injustice, but do something about it.
Born in 1964, Kamala Harris's story begins in the diverse and progressive neighborhoods of the San Francisco Bay Area. Her immigrant parents, Shyamala Gopalan from India and Donald Harris from Jamaica, met in Berkeley, California, where the two gifted graduate students arrived to study at the University of California. 1960s Berkeley was a center of civil rights and peace activism.
And if there is any reason that I have come out here, it is to give you a message of hope.
Harris has said her earliest memories are of being taken to rallies in a stroller. By 1970, the Harris' marriage had ended. Shyamala Gopalan, with her two daughters, found an apartment to rent in an area of Berkeley known as the Flatlands.
So they lived above the daycare center, above Shelton's daycare, in a modest 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment.
Childhood friend Carol Porter first met Harris at the school bus stop.
Right here at the corner of Bancroft and Browning in West Berkeley. We were the second class to desegregate Berkeley Public Schools. So we were on our way up to Thousand Oaks Elementary School, which was in a more affluent, white area.
Through visits to Chennai, India, the family maintained connections with relatives. Harris has said that her grandfather, who served in India's government, was an inspiration. At the same time, Shyamala Gopalan knew that in America, her daughters would be seen as black and nurtured them as proud black women. They regularly visited a cultural center known as Rainbow Sign.
It was a place that a lot of intellectuals from UC Berkeley went to. Also a lot of artists go, Maya Angelou, James Baldwin, Nina Simone. They grew up around a table of highly educated professional people of color.
Harris chose to attend a historically black college, Howard University in Washington, D.C., majoring in political science and economics. She found her political voice on the student council and debate team.
She didn't have any problem debating with the guys, and that she could stand her own ground and she could succinctly and clearly get her arguments across.
Back in the Bay Area, Harris earned a law degree and began her career. In 1990, at a time when record levels of black men were incarcerated in California, she took a job as a prosecutor, a role often viewed negatively in the African-American community.
But Kamala wanted to change systems. She wanted to go in and change things so that people weren't being prosecuted the way that they were based on systemic and structural racism.
In 2002, Harris took on the incumbent in a race for San Francisco District Attorney. Andrea Steele is a political consultant who helped with that campaign.
There had never been a woman district attorney. And in fact, women district attorneys they were not a thing. There were not a lot of them in the entire country, much less a woman of color. The first poll had her at 6%. She was really an underdog. But from the beginning, she had something very special.
Harris won the close race and quickly set to work on her agenda. She sought to increase convictions and prison time for violent offenders, while steering those convicted of first-time nonviolent crimes into her rehabilitation program called Back on Track.
She really had a passion for women and children. That was a big focus for her. She was very involved in domestic violence issues.
In 2008, San Francisco voters were considering Proposition K, a ballot measure to decriminalize prostitution. Harris angered many on the left by opposing the measure.
This is not about being compassionate, and frankly, this is not about that movie Pretty Woman. Go home and rent it if you'd like to see it. But if you want to pass Proposition K, you're going to have the exact opposite effect, which is you're going to basically give a green light to the sexual exploitation of women and girls.
In another break with progressives, Harris took on truancy in schools by threatening parents of chronically absent students with jail time or fines. Gilda Rand was a communications director for Attorney General Harris.
Her desire to tune in to a root problem, kids not going to school at a young age and ending up in prison, was an example of more systemic thinking, rather than just, who cares what happens to you? If you break the law later, you go to jail. She was trying to find a solution there at the front end of the problem.
Harris championed the right for same-sex couples to marry.
This is Kamala Harris. You must start marriages immediately.
And on the day the last legal barrier fell, she performed the first marriage.
I now declare you spouses for life.
Harris herself would marry 1 year later, forming a blended family with attorney Doug Emhoff and his 2 children from a previous marriage. Elected U.S. Senator in 2016, Harris quickly rose to national prominence as a sharp interrogator during hearings on Russian election interference.
So I need to be correct as best I can.
I do want you to be honest.
I'm not able to be rushed this fast. It makes me nervous.
And Donald Trump's nominees for the Supreme Court.
Can you think of any laws that give the government the power to make decisions about the male body?
I'm not thinking of any right now, Senator.
In her first campaign for president, her signature moment came when she criticized her then opponent, Joe Biden, over his past opposition to school busing.
There was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools, and she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
The comment scored political points, but her campaign struggled to find its direction and manage its staff.
There's definitely been stories about high staff turnover, inability to keep talented people in her orbit. I think that's a valid criticism of Harris that she's received from a lot of people.
Biden went on to win the nomination, but ultimately he would ask Harris to join the ticket as his vice president, and the two went on to victory in 2020, making her the first woman and the first person of color to win that office.
I, Kamala Davy Harris, solemnly swear.
Early on, Vice President Harris was tasked with addressing the surge of migrants attempting to cross the U.S. southern border. Following the administration's objective of focusing on root causes, she engaged with Mexican and Central American leaders in an effort to address instability and poverty in the region.
Today's announcement of more than $1 billion in new investments
She quickly became a political target, as a record number of migrants attempted to cross the border.
She was supposed to be the one that was in charge of securing our border at the very beginning of Biden's presidency, and I don't even know if she's been down there yet.
On becoming vice president, Harris backed away from some policies she had proposed in her first run for president, such as banning fracking, government-provided Medicare for all, and decriminalizing border crossings, prompting criticism from both ends of the political spectrum. In response, Harris has said that her values have not changed. Harris has grown more comfortable serving as an emissary on the world stage, emphasizing support and soothing tensions. And in a career defined by breaking barriers and exceeding expectations, Harris rose again, becoming the Democratic nominee for president when Biden unexpectedly dropped out of the race.
On behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
Matt Dibble, VOA News, Oakland, California.